Okay, so basically I can assume that I'm on air as of right now.
Yeah, you're on air, but I can edit it as I need to. Hey guys, of course this is GeorgeInflation.us. I recently put up a video about the swine flu. I was in Mexico City at the height of the swine flu, and I came up with some observations of my own, and I was put into touch with you, sir. And why don't you give us your name and your background?
My name is Dave Conrad. I grew up on a ranch in Canada, actually, and I believe, just as most of the rest of the population did for quite some time, what I learned in public school and everywhere else, the information that you get from the government, the pharmaceutical companies, about what a great idea vaccinations ought to be. The invention by Edward Jenner. It just made so much sense. You just inject a little bit of germ into somebody, and it allows their immune system to obtain a memory for that, so that it can annihilate that germ next time it encounters it. And so I grew up believing in vaccinations, and in fact, on the ranch, we faithfully every year vaccinated the calves for foot rot and things like that. But
and if you can just speak up a little bit more, what is your medical background, or how do people that haven't heard of you establish you as an authority in this?
Well, I don't know how much of an authority they would establish me as. I have my training is in chiropractic. I have a doctorate degree in chiropractic. I did practice chiropractic for about 5 years, several years ago, and then I decided I wanted to do other things for a living. But here's something interesting. As I was mentioning, I grew up on a ranch, and I loved horses. However, around the time of, the age of 5 or so, I developed an extreme allergy to horses. I'm talking not just a little hay fever, but an asthmatic reaction. And so I was so sensitive to horses that someone could ride a horse and get horse dander on them, microscopic horse dander. And then if they sat on a couch or something like that, if no one vacuumed the couch, I could come along a month later and get asthma. And, as a young kid that loves horses, this is kind of a traumatic thing. All of a sudden you're extremely allergic to the thing that you love, growing up on a ranch. And it didn't dawn on me until, about 20 years later. Well, I wondered, why horses? Why am I allergic to horses? Why not chickens, cows, or pigs? I love horses. Well, 20 plus years later, when I was in chiropractic college, we took a number of courses about, pharmacology, even though we don't specifically deal with pharmacology, but just to understand it. And I learned that the DPT vaccine, the pertussis component, that's the P component of the DPT vaccine, is cultured in, guess what? Horse serum. Horse serum is the blood of a horse with the blood cells removed. That's serum. So it's not cultured in chicken, cow, or pig serum. It's cultured in horse serum. And then I began to realize, hey, there's something going on here. But anyway, as time went on, I just had more and more information that I came across that convinced me that vaccinations damage a lot of people. And
you've been on the Alex Jones show discussing vaccinations, and I'll be honest with you.
I haven't actually been on the show, but I wrote an article.
Okay.
That I designed as a tool for people to be able to convince their friends. See, because as I said, I've known for 20 plus years that vaccines are a fraud. Not only do they not work, but they're damaging to a lot of people. And I have convinced a lot of people over the years about that. I used to hand out, books about it to my patients and friends and family members. But at the same time, I realized that it's difficult to convince people because
it's so ingrained in our culture.
Oh yeah, most of the public, I'd say 95% of them, just have they've learned in public school, as I did, and college and university, med school, wherever, that it's the intelligent thing to do. And people kind of have an impression that, hey, it's just little bits of germs mixed with some purified water, and it just sounds like a good idea. And I don't know, people tend to want to be found on the side of those who are perceived as the intelligent people in our society.
Now, I have 4 kids. I have kids. They're all vaccinated. I think they actually need to take more vaccination shots. What you're actually recommending is to not vaccinate children.
Yeah. In fact,
which is a pretty horrific statement to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
They would say that you're very irresponsible.
Yes, they would. And part of the problem is well, it's been perpetuated by a multi-billion-dollar company.
Okay, that makes logical sense to me. I can understand a profit motive for vaccinations. I can.
In fact,
and I'm not really a conspiracy type of guy, but I could. I think a lot of my listeners could grab the fact that, hey, there's a lot of money being changed hands by promotion of a vaccination culture. There could be, my mind could open up to the possibility that maybe some of this is unnecessary. But you're saying it's outright harmful, or do you think, is that your main gist here is the profit motive, or do you think there's something more sinister involved?
I think that they're outright harmful. And doctors are taught in medical school, and you've got to remember, the curricula at medical schools is controlled by pharmaceutical companies. And they, it's...
So let's just lay it down on the line. Let's just lay it down on the line.
To sell to the tune of billions of dollars. And
what you're saying is pharmaceutical companies are out to make you horrendous profits. They've promoted the vaccination culture, and that's part of the program. That's how they make their money.
For 200 years, well, that's just one aspect of how they make money, but that's a big part of, that's one aspect of their industry, the vaccine industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. In fact, in the 200 years that it's been in existence, see, people tend to think, there can't be too much money in vaccinations because it never costs anything. But what they don't realize is the government's always paying for it. I mean, the government...
Oh, yeah, I can understand that.
...dollars for them to make the vaccines, to research and to develop and to make them. And then they pay billions of dollars to buy it. It's for the people, and they just give it to all the people. But it's been going on for 200 years to the tune of, I would say, trillions of dollars of public tax dollars in the last 200 years.
Okay, well, let's give you the fact that maybe the vaccination culture is promulgated by profit motives of pharmaceuticals. Let's talk about the swine flu, okay? I got a big smack in the face when I did a report on the swine flu, and I flew down to Mexico, and I just realized, it just hit me all of a sudden, that this is all a big hoax. They shut down this city, 15 to 20 million people, everyone was locked down, and what was it for? A couple hundred deaths. And now the mainstream media is going bonkers with promoting the idea of mass vaccinations for this swine flu. They're talking about going to my kids' school and forcing my kids. Now I'm concerned. And
it's one thing when it's been voluntary, but at the same time, it really hasn't. I mean, most of the public out there has been under the impression that they have to get their kids vaccinated because they're not told.
Well, sure. Before you go to school, they require you have those vaccination shots.
Yeah, they're just said your kids have got to have these shots to get into school. They're not told unless people are self-informed, and say I want the exemption form. They don't mention it. But no, it's one thing that needs to be understood is if you ask for statistics from the government, and the statistics that are given to medical schools to medical students in medical school are, okay, on such and such year we introduced the vaccine for this particular disease, and then they show a graph of morbidity and mortality from that particular disease, just going.
It doesn't change, does it?
Decline. But if you ask for the numbers from the government, from the CDC, of the 80 years before that, the decades before the vaccine was introduced, and then you plot that graph, you see that graph was in sharp decline for several decades before it was ever introduced. It didn't change the curve of the graph whatsoever. And
logically I could see your point of view here, that vaccination shots are just a little too much, too late. They don't change the curve of the graph.
And
Vaccination shots are just a little too much, too late. They don't change the curve of the graph. the diseases are already on the downswing. But are you telling me polio and smallpox, all those vaccinations are worthless?
Oh yeah. In fact, when you listen to the pharmaceutical people, they try to claim that they have they have saved us from all of these dread diseases. But you know what? If you think about it for just a moment, there isn't a vaccine, and there never has been, for bubonic plague. There isn't a vaccine, and there never has been for cholera, for scarlet fever, and the list goes on and on. There are a whole bunch of things there never has been a vaccine for, but they've declined also.
Well, here's the big thing.
And also, when you look at countries where they didn't introduce the vaccine and the statistics for those countries, the graph is exactly the same. You see,
like what country would that be?
Well, for example, there are certain programs that were introduced in the United States that didn't occur in. I don't remember specifically, but you can look up the information from a source that I will tell you when we're through here. But you can look at the numbers of various different countries where the vaccine program was never introduced, and then the graphs are the same.
Okay, well,
when it comes to polio, it was already in sharp decline. When you've got a new disease that's introduced to a population that is not used to that disease, it's the resistance of that population is not nearly as good as it becomes later on.
How do you explain the 38,000 or 35,000 people that die from the common flu, but yet swine flu hasn't even killed a couple hundred people, and everyone's getting all,
It's a manufactured event.
What's going on here? Why is there a disconnect between logical reality here and why everyone's getting so excited about swine flu when it hasn't even killed that many people?
Well, I'll tell you.
What's the push here? Just tell me what the push is.
The push is profits and eugenics.
Okay, so it's profits, so they want to make a lot of money, and that's why they're pushing this swine flu thing? Can't they push some other drug and at some other time for some other reason? I mean, why does it have to be swine flu? What's the deal with that?
Well, first of all, with the regular flu, 36,000 people a year in the United States alone succumbing,
Wow, okay.
That's the regular flu numbers every year.
Wow.
Usually the people that die from flu are, they've got one foot in the grave and another foot on a banana peel anyway. Their immune systems are compromised.
Yeah, they're the elderly.
Yeah, or young people with compromised immune systems. They're...
Okay,
they've got a number
what's the push then?
Health problems.
Why are they pushing on this profitability aspect?
But for people who are healthy and their immune systems are strong, they've got a sniffly nose for a few days or a little nausea.
Yeah.
Doesn't kill them.
So why do they want to stick a needle in my kids?
Okay, here's a little tidbit for you to chew on. You know who Bill Gates is and Warren Buffett are?
Yeah, of course.
Right? And people like them. Well, it's public knowledge that they are eugenicists. They are for an 80% or more reduction in the population.
Are you serious on that?
And I've got documentation for you that I can give you.
How are they going to get rid of 80% of the population?
There are a number of ways. And you're aware that the UN also has those same philosophies.
I'm not into conspiracy, so I don't know. This is pretty new, kind of new to me.
Are you aware that the current White House Science and Technology Czar, John P. Holdren, is a well-known eugenicist?
No, I'm.
He wrote an 1,100.
I can understand the powers that be are trying to limit the amount of population through sterilization or abortion or euthanasia, but I don't understand about. I don't know if I actually believe that they're going after living people that are adults.
Well, I'm going to refer you to a source that proves that they are. This is John P. Holdren, used to be head of science and technology at MIT. Then he was at Harvard, and now he's the science czar. for all of science and technology of the entire United States. He's the White House Director of Science and Technology. His name is John P. Holdren. He has a textbook, which I will refer you to.
And how are they going to kill off 80% of the population?
He has a textbook that's 1,100 pages long. That's an above PhD level textbook for high level government policy. He co-authored that book with Paul Ehrlich back in the 70s, and it is full of things like putting things in the water, putting things in vaccines, using soft kill weapons on the people, using war and famine and pestilence and disease. But getting back to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they are known eugenicists. They want to depopulate the world by 80%, and so does the UN and UNICEF, et cetera, and there are documents that prove that. And yet, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have personally donated tens of billions of dollars towards vaccination programs in third world countries, working in unison with the UN and the UNICEF. Now, if those men and those organizations have a philosophy of reducing the world population by 80%, why would they be so concerned about the health and well-being and longevity of third world children? And you've got to think about this for a second. If it really is a fraud that vaccines don't work anyway, and that I can prove that, and I'll refer you to something that will.
Okay.
And if there have been trillions of dollars sucked from the public coffers over the last 200 years towards vaccine programs, and if there are people in people that determine policy federally and nationally and internationally that are for profound population reduction, what a perfect little instrument when people are willing to roll up their sleeve and let them inject something into them.
So what's going to happen with swine flu? They're going to go around to the public schools, forcibly inject all the children, and then what's going to happen?
Well, here are some possibilities. I don't know if you're aware of this, but they have hyped this thing up on purpose. They have manufactured it, and they have driven it to
I know they've hyped it up.
Our level 6 pandemic. Well, there are laws in place since 9/11 that during a level 6 pandemic, there are 3 different federal laws that have been passed, and I'm going to refer you to a place that gives documentation for that. The laws are now in place that if they think they can get away with it, without too much of a public backlash, the laws are in place that they can force everyone to take the vaccine, man, woman, child, and the alternative is involuntary incarceration in a FEMA camp. And if they really wanted to, they could strap you down and inject you there too. Now, if vaccines really worked, the people that believed in vaccines could get the vaccine. And then they don't have to worry, do they? Because they've had the vaccine.
Well, I just have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to want to get the swine flu vaccine.
Well, we're trying to increase public awareness so that enough people refuse the shot, and then they won't be able to follow through with their plan to incarcerate people. See, their plan depends upon 95% of the public continuing to believe that vaccinations are intelligent and being willing to just roll up their sleeve and take the shot. But if millions of people refuse the shot, they don't have the resources to be able to follow through with incarceration, and they'll just back off.
Well, let's say they come around and they inject people. What's going to happen to the kids that get injected?
You've heard of Gulf War syndrome, have you not?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there are numerous doctors and scientists and studies that demonstrate that an ingredient in the anthrax vaccine, which was widely used just prior to Gulf War I, the military people basically have no choice when it comes to vaccines. They're given orders and they roll up their sleeves. Well, there are hundreds of thousands of them that have debilitating autoimmune disorders, and many of them have died. And that has been linked to an ingredient in the anthrax vaccine, which is called squalene. Have you heard of squalene?
No.
Squalene is an oil-based, what they call an adjuvant. Adjuvant is something that they can add into the vaccine, which kind of irritates a person's immune system, causes a person to create more antibodies against what's in that vaccine. Therefore, the most expensive component of the vaccine, the antigen or the germ, they can have much fewer of that. See, it's a costly process to make lots of that. So if they can have fewer of that and then add an adjuvant to the vaccine to increase people's antibody titers, then that allows them to make way more vaccine for far less money and have a bigger profit margin. But squalene is an ingredient in your own body. There are molecules in your own body that are identical to squalene that are components of your nervous system, and also components in cartilaginous areas of your joints, etc., and a number of different areas of your body. And when this is injected right into your body, squalene, and I'm just giving you one example of things that can go wrong with vaccines, it causes your immune system to think of that molecule and anything that looks like that molecule as an enemy. And so
well, I got people in my immediate family with degenerative arthritis, thyroid disease. My kids, you could say they might have, forms of ADD. You're telling me some of this stuff could be from the vaccines that they've taken?
Yeah, ADD is a mild form of autism.
Yeah, I'm seeing that in one of my kids. You tell me that could have came from the vaccination shots?
You bet it could have.
Wow.
Because it's an autoimmune disorder. Your own immune system causes inflammation in various different areas of your body, including the brain, which causes damage to the tissues. Autism was an unknown disease before they introduced thimerosal in vaccines back in the 30s. It was an unknown disease. And when they really bumped up the shot schedule, I think in 1989, they went from, a handful of shots to many, many, many shots that they're having these kids.
Yeah, my kids are getting shots all the time, so you're telling me...
Since 1989, autism rates have gone from, I'm trying to remember the numbers, but I will give you documentation where you can actually find the numbers. It went from, 1 out of every, 2,500 kids, between the 30s and 1989, to now it's 1 out of 166 kids have autism.
Yeah, everybody has autism. No one can pay attention.
1 out of 6 have milder forms like ADD, ADHD, etc. In some of the documentation that I'm going to refer you to, I don't know if you've ever heard of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby Kennedy's kid. He's an attorney. He's also an investigative journalist. He did an investigation on a secret meeting that took place, I can't remember the year, a handful of years ago, at a secret location in Norcross, Georgia. It was a meeting convened by the CDC and all of the top-level pharmaceutical companies or representatives of them. And he's an attorney, and he's a respected attorney and an investigative journalist. He obtained documents through the Freedom of Information Act that were transcripts of that meeting. And they show that they were getting together. They were very concerned about studies that were proving that they were harming millions of kids, and the discussion of the meeting was how to cover it up. But, one thing you have got to understand, in addition to there being a number of forces that are for depopulating the world by 80%, there's an industry that claims that they're for making you healthier, but it's not in their financial interest for the population to be healthy. In fact...
now that's making sense to me. What you're saying is making sense to me now.
The more people that are sick and need drugs, the more money they make. In fact, in the documentation that I'm going to referring you to, there is a video clip, I think it's about 9 minutes long. It is a Merck scientist. He's the top vaccine researcher and developer of the world, a renowned guy. Can't remember his name. Maurice Hilleman, I think was his name. Worked for Merck for a number of years. He's being interviewed in this video by a doctor who is the medical director of medical history at the University of Toronto. This is an internal interview. It was never meant to be gotten out into the public at all. And in this interview, and I'm going to refer you to the video, you can see it for yourself, this guy is admitting that they knew there were cancer viruses like SV40 and other things in the vaccines, polio vaccine and other vaccines that came from diseased monkey kidney tissue that they were growing cultures in, that they dispersed to the public, millions of people, cancer viruses, and they're laughing about it.
Wow.
They're laughing about it in the video. Not only that, but AIDS and a number of other things. I mean, he says, like, there are 40 different viruses in these monkey kidney tissues we've been dispersing to the people. Here you've got a multi-billion-dollar industry, the pharmaceutical industry. They are absolutely in control of the curriculum at medical school, and it is not in their financial interests for the people to be healthy. And when you got a bunch of eugenicists running the world, combined with a bunch of people that they've got huge financial incentives to keep a myth going that, hey, we've saved you from all these diseases.
Yeah, I didn't believe in myths and conspiracies till I went to Mexico, and I saw firsthand how ridiculous this swine flu hoax was. I mean,
yeah,
it's
been manufactured, but see caused me to decide to take action here. See, I've known for 20 plus years, as I said, that it's a fraud. It doesn't work anyway, and it's also very damaging. Not a single one of my kids has ever been vaccinated, and you won't find a healthier family than ours.
Where can people go for more information? Because we're not going to cover it all right now.
Here's where they can go. When you watch the video entitled InfoWars Revolution, Truth About Vaccines, Part 3, that I sent to you.
Yeah.
I'm discussing a tool that I designed for people to be able to quickly convince their friends about the truth about vaccines. Because, I mean, you can go to a number of different places, but you're just so overwhelmed with information, or you go to one place and it's just information from one guy. Well, this is testimony from several different credible medical doctors and scientists, and it's a matter of watching a couple short video clips, and you're educated. I mean, you're convinced. You watch the first 8-minute video clip.
Okay, where is it, though?
Search for "They want to inject my kid with what?"
Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. I'll put a link in the sidebar. And real quick, before I let you go,
at Infowars.com.
I got you. I'll put a link in the sidebar.
They published that email that I designed for people to use as a tool as an article. It's called "They Want to Inject My Kid with What?" You go through that, and you'll be absolutely 100% convinced of the truth. And you'll also have a tool that you can just
tell me,
send to all your friends, and it'll convince them also.
Tell me what's really going to go down with this swine flu thing. I mean, if we don't talk to enough people and enough people don't stand up against this, just lay out the truth. What's going to happen?
I think that if the powers that be had their way, and if 95% of the public still were willing to go along with it, they probably would follow through with their design that they have set up, the scenario that they have set up, where they've got the laws that say they can force everyone, and then to have the vaccine, and the few that resist, well, they could easily manage them and incarcerate them.
How would they incarcerate them? I don't understand that. Like, I'm a family, says I don't want to do it, then what happens? They come to my house? If there are
only a few of you, then it's easily manageable through FEMA and working in conjunction with the police and the military.
They just come to your house and...
Hey, it's the law. You've got to take this, or you've got a choice. You can either go to the FEMA camp, or you can take this. And if they really wanted to, when they get you to the FEMA camp, they could strap you down and give it to you anyway.
Okay, so that's the end. That's the end game. That's what I wanted to find out. If we don't get enough...
It's out. I told you about squalene and the link to Gulf War syndrome.
Yeah.
The tremendous amount of debilitating autoimmune disorders and death that caused. Well, these vaccines have squalene in them too.
Great.
Vaccine. Now, the ones they're using to test people may not, but the ones they're going to put out into the public are. I mean, they've purchased tons and tons of squalene, and they can't make enough antigen fast enough without using an adjuvant. It's going to have squalene.
Yeah, I know, and they're rushing these things out the door. I just really don't understand why you'd want to, well, depopulate. I don't understand that, but I don't understand why you'd want to handicap.
There are a number of. In fact, it's not a rare thing. It's a very common thing in the scientific community, and the heads of the scientific departments of universities to have a philosophy that we got too many people screwing up the world. We need to depopulate the world by at least 80%, some to 90%, to decrease the population from 6 billion down to 500 billion. Well, vaccines are the perfect soft kill weapon. People don't realize what the heck happened because they don't get the cancer till 10 or 20 years later, or they've got these gradual onset of autoimmune disorders that devastate their health, but they just don't put two and two together. They're told, hey, yeah, vaccines have just saved so many lives. There's a minuscule chance they might harm a person, like a 1 in a million chance, but that's a lie. That's a big lie. I mean, I know so many people that have been vaccine damaged, and just about everybody I know knows someone, and I don't know a million people. I'm lucky if I know 1,000 people.
Well, thank God I've been vaccinated, but I don't have any bad health issues except a little high blood pressure. But, I don't think it was able to damage me, but it may have damaged my kids and my family somehow.
Well, and it's hard to know what it's done to you and what it may do to you in the future, because some of the effects are very long-term. It may not happen until your immune system weakens a little more, you have an event in your life or you get a little older or whatever, and then certain things that have been introduced to your body can start to take effect, like the SV40 monkey viruses. And there are millions of them in people through the vaccines. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, SV40.
No, totally not.
Well, you will learn when you go to that article that I wrote called "They Want to Inject My Kid with What?" Oh, and here's another thing. You know what else is in a lot of the vaccines?
What?
Aborted fetal tissue.
Oh, great.
And all good people anywhere are going to be disturbed when they find that out. And you can go right to the CDC's own website, and they disclose that. They call it, they try to disguise it by calling it human diploid cells. Most people don't know what human diploid cells are. But then when you Google what human diploid cells are and you read what, scientific papers...
Why are they putting aborted fetuses in this stuff?
Pardon?
Why do they have to put aborted fetuses in the vaccines?
Well, they don't have to, but they like to.
But why, though?
Well, for example, they have to grow the germ components of the vaccines. They have to grow a whole bunch of antigen for the vaccines. And they grow it on all kinds of stuff. They grow it on monkey kidneys, diseased monkey kidneys, dog brains, chicken livers, chicken eggs, horse serum. They grow it in all kinds of things. One of the things they like to grow germs in is cells that are derived from aborted fetal tissue.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so, people are injecting their kids with aborted fetal tissue with something that doesn't work anyway, and it's a whole witch's brew of a concoction. It's not just little bits of germs mixed with purified water. There's mercury in a lot of them, which is extremely toxic to the brain. There's aluminum in a lot of them, which is also extremely toxic. And
now, are you breaking
the whole list of toxic things?
Are you breaking
that on the CDC's own website?
Are you breaking the law by not vaccinating your kids?
No. Another thing that you'll see in that They Want to Inject My Kid with What? You just get down. It's like about a 4-page long email, is what it is. You just get down the first page. Not only are you already 100% convinced that vaccines are a fraud and they don't work and they're dangerous, but you're also given the information of what your rights are. See, you're like a lot of people. They've just assumed they've been told they've got to have their kids given all these shots to get into school. They're not told that the state laws are written so that they can get out of it by asking for an exemption form. It's just a rare few people like me and a few others that demand that exemption form. They don't volunteer that information because they want everybody to get vaccinated. They've been trained by the medical profession, by the public health officials and everybody else. It's good to have everyone vaccinated. They preach this phony thing called herd immunity.
Yeah.
Heard of that, haven't you? That's
Yeah.
what they use against vaccine resistors. Oh, you guys are irresponsible. You're ruining it for the rest of us. But if the vaccines really worked, the ones that took the vaccine wouldn't have anything to worry about. That's just another little lie to promote the myth. But, yeah, you'll learn about how you can get an exemption form. All you got to do is ask your school or the county nurse for an exemption form. And we're talking about just about any state in the U.S. or Canada, province in Canada. They'll have usually 3 different types of exemptions: a personal philosophy exemption, or a religious exemption, or a medical exemption. And I explain how to use all 3 of those. The philosophical exemption is the easiest, but if you don't have that, you can use the religious. I mean, if your religion includes the belief that you have the right to exercise your moral agency to choose what may or may not be injected into your kid, then you sign the religious one. If all you've got is a medical exemption form, then you find a doctor that is willing to write a statement similar to the following: this child has a family history of autoimmune disorder, therefore vaccines could be harmful to this child. And everybody in their family tree has someone that at least has had allergies, and that's a form of autoimmune disorder. But that's all in the article I'm sending you to. And that article documents this every which way from Sunday, several different testimonies.
Okay, well, we'll definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, and